Greetings, Algo artisans. Bad news, Bitcoin is going to zero. Just kidding, just kidding. Let's go ahead and take a look at the markets for a week wrap up. I'm going to jump into the charts right now. Okay, so first of all, apologies for the last couple of days. I am using some different equipment and I did have a hard time getting it up and running for these recorded shows here. So we just had a couple of days of no shows. It happens. I'm generally here faithfully every day. Let's go ahead and get into it. We got Bitcoin here on the chart, looking at our daily chart that we look at. We always start here, and we have a consolidation going all the way back to March, which is basically where price has just been going up and down in the same range for now several months. And this is the halving, post-halving doldrums, right? Just when things kind of get quiet after the halving. And the question is what's going to happen next? Well, this range is pretty well defined. We do have, of course, that deviation where price dipped into the bottom, and we talked about this last week. This is following the Wyckoff pattern pretty well. And the Wyckoff pattern is an accumulation or distribution pattern. And if you were to take a look at that right here on the chart, if I superimpose that right on top of the actual pattern, we're looking at a very similar scenario here. Now, Wyckoff or Wyckoff, or however it is pronounced, that can be an accumulation or a distribution, and it can be continuation or it can be reversal. What that means is that price can go up and keep going up, or price can go down and keep going down, or price could go down and then go up afterwards. But this is a pretty decently clear version of the Wyckoff pattern. It's just taking a little bit longer to go ahead and manifest as this plays out. So these are not always perfect. They don't always happen at the same time, but there you have it right there. And price should continue up, of course, given that we are in the part of the market after the halving, right? After halvings, historically, price tends to pull back a bit, and then it consolidates and eventually makes its way up. It can take a couple of months. So I would expect price to break out anytime between now and August. Pretty broad range right there. And until it does, price could do a lot of things. Although the way I think it's really going to work is it'll break out pretty soon, maybe in the next week or two. That's the most likely look, although it's not necessarily going to happen. So what would that look like? Well, let's jump in a little deeper here and take a look at this current consolidation. Price did break down out of that. Okay, so where might price go once it breaks down? It might have already gone where it's going to go. Price is always going to go towards liquidity, and liquidity happens where there's been a lot of price action before. And where there's been a lot of price action before is basically throughout this area right here that I'm drawing. But in the past, going back to here. So price is just touching the top of that right now. It could go all the way to the bottom of that. It does not necessarily mean that price needs to just bounce right off the top of it, but anywhere in that area is where price is likely to go. And the algos do give us clues as to what will happen and when it's going to happen next. But for the moment, it does appear that price wants to head down as low as 60,000. May not make it there. In fact, if I had to bet, I would say price probably is going to bounce off the low 60s, maybe 63, something along those lines. That's just where there's some price action, a lot of pivot points around 63,000. So we may see price do something like that. And again, I don't worry about how that works. I just go level by level and I let price do what it's going to do. Price could always dip down and retouch that 56,000 area that it did several weeks ago. But right now it does appear that it needs to take a break. So right now, I think the most likely place for price to go is 63,000 and possibly even down to 60. This is a weekly chart, so you're actually looking at price on a much higher time frame now. It's actually a 5-day chart. So if we take a look at this, there's a decent chance price to go down and visit these two areas, just like we talked about. 63,000 or maybe even 60,000. And the algos do support a move down, at least down to 63. So I may try to catch some scalp shorts over the weekend on that or during the week, depending on how long this takes. And remember, volatility after the halving does tend to fall. And when you have long periods of consolidation, that means that the longer it ranges, the harder it breaks out. It's almost a general rule. Now, I am assuming, given the halving cycle and the way things have always worked so far with Bitcoin, that price will break up to the upside. And the targets I have for nearer term, say perhaps in the month of June or even July, might be 75 and 79,000. 75 for the initial breakout and perhaps a breakout and retest. So what would that look like? It means price probably would range here for a while, maybe pop back up, perhaps consolidate a bit or not, and then break out. Now, after it breaks out, it may come back down to grab some liquidity and then make its way up to here. And then the higher time frame targets that I have are 80 and 88,000. So this would theoretically push this consolidation out a bit further here. See, most likely that's how that would look. But you know what? Price could simply turn right back around, head right back up, and break out much, much sooner than that. I wouldn't focus too much on one plan of action. I would just take everything level by level, play the range, and if the algos say to go long, then go long. And if I see a nice hard dip and price goes to 60,000, then I might even play that range. Depending on what the algos say, I might simply just take a long right there, see how it goes. I did think the price was possibly going to break out here, and this was last week and the week before, so I did take some longs actually on Solana, and they were high risk, small position longs. So it didn't really hurt me that they didn't work out, but if they played out, they would have been massively profitable. So as we are all pretty much planning on the halvening pushing price up, as price gets to one of these key levels here, whether it be 63 or 60 or even 56, as price flips around, I'll probably take some gnarly longs. You're talking about massive risk to reward longs. So it'll look something like, just in this current scenario bouncing off 60, I probably would take a long right around there, and I would have a pretty tight stop loss. So something along these lines, and then price would just possibly go all the way up here. And, you know, I would use my algorithms. I might even be able to take a super tight stop and have like a 20 to 1 or some crazy trade, but I would have a small amount on that, and then I have a larger amount with a deeper stop and a larger amount with a deeper stop. And as price were to go up, I would build a position and I would eventually have some nice longs. And as long as they did not get wiped out, then I would see some massive profits, and that is the game plan. Now again, this flip around might not happen at 60,000. It might happen at 63. It might happen right where it is right now. It might happen down at 56. Could do a lot of things, and fortunately, we have the range to look at and prior price action from this area, and we've got algos to give us clues. So I know I'll be telling Algo Factory what I'm going to be doing. Of course, Algo Factory is not a signal service, so it's merely for education, but I imagine people are going to use that data, whatever I do, as part of their research. They did that with Solana last year, and everybody got about a 20x on that. So that happened with a lot of Algo Factory members. Yep, I called out Solana at about, I think it was like $15 or so. And I explained what was going to probably happen with it. And a lot of people did their own research, made a lot of money. And that's things that happen at Algo Factory, algofactory.tech. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at gold. Now, gold is great to trade. Right now, it is obeying this range. Remember, we're looking at the weekly chart, right? So price on the weekly is being held up with basically $2,300 being the bottom. And bouncing off 2,300 is just what price seems to want to do. So for the moment, what I'm looking at, and I've looked at the algos here, is possibly maybe a little bit longer of a range, because the algos do call for a little bit of a break from all this really, really hard action upwards, but eventually a breakout here. And I would say $3,000 gold is very possible in the year of 2024. 25 and 2600 are going to be the near-term targets. And I have some higher time frame targets sitting at $2,700. Actually, it's a little higher than that, but I would take profit at about 27 if I were in a trade. Again, I do think precious metals are going up. We've had a lot of news lately. The petrodollar is no longer a thing, although it will take some time to unwind. But as that happens, gold is probably going to continue to go up, and eventually silver will follow suit. Just in my opinion, not investment advice. Let's take a quick look at the DXY, the dollar index, for those of us who trade Forex, which is where I prefer to trade. So the DXY and the dollar are getting stronger. This makes a lot of sense because Canada and Europe, the ECB, just cut rates. Europe for the first time since 2019, and we actually held steady. We did not cut our rates here in the States. So this is an indication that we're a little bit more hawkish than those other countries. So the dollar compared to other countries, to other central banks, the dollar is going to remain strong. So price appears to be more or less breaking out of not a very clean range. I wouldn't call this a breakout really until price. I would want it to break really above this top here. But if price did break up above 106.54, I would consider that at least a short-term breakout with high probability of making its way past this 107.33. Now, I'm not saying that this is the path that it's going to take. Price could easily reject and head back down. A lot of that's going to depend on what happens with the economy. Right now, the dollar is the cleanest shirt in the dirty laundry when it comes to the Western currencies. So people are going to want to use that in trade. And that, at this point, I think is the only tool that they have to keep the dollar being used around the world, is to give it a good yield. So I would imagine that the dollar may remain relatively strong. The problem is that they have to prop up the markets in the U.S. And the world has invested in U.S. markets, so the imperative to keep those markets going up is extremely important, and that is done by cutting interest rates. So it's going to be an interesting way that everything's going to play out. We're going to see if officialdom is able to keep the markets going up and the dollar continuing to lose its use around the world, or if they're going to keep the dollar strong to try to preserve the dollar's use around the world at the cost of the markets. And I am betting on the former and not the latter. I am betting they're going to have to cut rates. Literally betting. And gold doing what it's doing is going to definitely be a clue as to what's going to happen. And remember, this is not dollar strength, period. This is just dollar strength compared to other currencies. This is a competition for use of the dollar, essentially. So this was just a general market overview and a little tour de force of what we are able to do over at Algo Factory. So if you want to learn how to do this, come to algofactory.tech. I hope this video was helpful. Please come over to algofactory.tech. We teach people how to build their own trading method, otherwise known as an algorithm. You don't have to know how to code, but if you do code, we can put you on the path to where you can build something that trades for you while you're not at the computer. If you just want to trade manually, which is what most people are doing, then that is, of course, something that we can help you do and help you have the capability to possibly extract money out of these markets on a regular basis. And while we do focus on crypto for a lot of these videos, I'm actually primarily a Forex trader, and you got to know that crypto doesn't go forever. It goes for about a year, year and a half, and then for a couple of years, there's not much going on in crypto. And if you want to be a trader, you're going to want to understand how to really trade, how to put on those big boy pants, because what's going to happen is eventually crypto's going to flatten out, and the meme coins aren't going to be what they used to be, most likely. I've seen it enough times. I've been in this game since 2017. I don't expect that to change. So come on over, learn how to trade. As a matter of fact, we got some pretty happy customers who are already down the path of success in their algo building. Let's hear from one of those right now.
This is ThinkFree's Algo Factory testimonial. I began my prescription for Algo Factory the summer of 2023. I am now 70 years old, and I have set a goal to have a supplementary income by learning to trade. I have been putting in about 3 to 4 hours per week of study time. In spite of this small time of commitment, I am determined to learn to trade. I set a goal of slow, steady progress in my learning. It is now March of 2024, and I have been delighted that through the articulate speech and hands-on help and support from Cowboy, I have developed an algo that looks very promising. I've come to appreciate Cowboy's remarkable ability to communicate and teach. He's not just knowledgeable, but also very creative in his shoot-from-the-hips approach. I wonder, is that where the name Cowboy came from? I have followed the Algo Cowboy and V the Guerrilla Economist for more than 3 years, and have found them to be very respectful, caring, and firmly rooted in reality. By that I mean they have a clear, deep, no-nonsense understanding of the world we live in, not just in trading and economics, but geopolitically and, dare I say, spiritually as well. For me, this fact makes working with them all the more gratifying and secure. This has and continues to be a great investment of my time and money. Also ends up being fun with the humor that is shared amongst our Algo Factory group members. Thank you, Cowboy.
Don't forget algofactory.tech. Trade your job, upgrade your life. We'll see you on the next one.